Yeah.
What was that, Shirley? Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
That was one of the most beautiful, I guess, talks leading our meditation. It was just lovely. So thank you for
You're
me
very
personally.
welcome. Thanks, Shirley. You know, I want to start by saying thank you to the Dhamma Buddhist Society for inviting me to lead this evening. Usually every couple of months I get the honor of meeting with you all. And it really is, I say really from my heart, that just to sit and have you all there with me is beautiful. So I hope that you enjoy the sitting together with the group as well. I wanted to tonight share with you, and again, thanks and my deepest gratitude to Anna Garika Dhammadina. Yesterday, she died yesterday, September 19th, 1990, so 33 years ago. And it's because of Anna Garika that we're all here. She started the Dhamma Buddhist Society that many years ago. And I was one of the original people that was involved with that. And it is the society is sort of went a little to sleep and then is awake again and offering all sorts of Dhamma teachings. And so I was reflecting actually a lot on Anna Garika just yesterday and today as well. And what she offered us is quite incredible. To think that we all have an idea of what the Dhamma is, what the Buddha offered us thousands of years ago, because of Anna Garika. And a little bit of history there to fill you in is in the mid-70s, I was one of the founding members of the Yoga Association of Alberta. And I was at that point in charge of workshops, and we'd had quite a few yoga workshops. And we, the executive or the board, decided that we should have a meditation workshop. And I did not know Anna Garika at that point, but I was given her name and said, this is somebody that maybe come and do a retreat for us, do a workshop. So I wrote her a letter, and she said she'd be delighted to come and that she suggested we do a 5-day silent retreat. Well, little did I know, I had no idea what that meant. And so here we are many years later, because that she came and did that 5-day retreat with us or for us, and continued to come and continued to teach us the Dhamma, meditation, as well as study. She loved the Abhidhamma, which is part of the study of meditation. And that was, although I had done lots of yoga, that was my first introduction to Buddhism. I don't even know if I'd heard the word Buddhism before then. Lots of the Hindu scriptures and lots of yoga tradition, but not the Buddhist teachings. And Anna Garika, there were many reasons I loved her dearly. And for me, she was a Buddhist nun when I met her. But before she became a Buddhist nun, she was a mother. She had a son, Walter, who I believe is still alive. Shirley, do you know if Walter's still alive?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
He wasn't well a while ago.
I know. That's why I thought, but I haven't heard. Anyway, she had the son, Walter, who had 2 boys, and we got to meet them. to know them all. And even from that very first retreat, I left that retreat thinking, this is something I can use for my whole life. This is something that is going to be valuable. And so the Dhamma, the way Anagarika taught it, was very practical. We did study, but the practical part was that she was a woman, for one thing, and she had children, she had grandchildren. She'd lived a very active life, and yet she'd gone off in her later years. She says she traveled the highways and byways for 7 years looking for answers that she'd had since she was a young child, and found those answers in Sri Lanka, in India, and became a nun, came back to Canada. She was Austrian by birth, but had lived in Canada for many years. And there she was. So she could relate to us as lay people. And so when we, could go to her and say, we're having trouble with this, or I don't understand that, she knew what we were talking about. And for me, that was very, very practical. So I have a lot of gratitude for her, for what she taught us. And I'm just going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, because about a month ago now, close to a month ago, there was 100th birthday anniversary for Ayakema. And there was a on Zoom, and I was invited to say some words about Ayakema. And Ayakema came because of Anagarika. Anagarika had said to me, she had heard about this nun, again, a Theravada Buddhist nun, and she said, write her a letter. This is long before there were internets or phone calls, that sort of thing. It was all written. So you'd write a letter, wait at least 2 weeks back before you got an answer. But I wrote to Ayakema and said, we're in Canada. We are a very dedicated group of practitioners. And would you come and lead a retreat for us? And she did. So that was 1987 that she came. And unknown to me at the time, a month before that, Ayakema, Lekshi Tzomo, who's an American Tibetan nun, and a Thai university professor, the three of them had organized a conference in Bodh The Dalai Lama attended, and it was specifically for nuns. And my understanding, it was the first nuns conference that had been held since the Buddha's time. So it was a pretty big event. So when Aya came here, she just came from the conference to Calgary, and she was pretty excited, very excited. And so she said to me, why don't you come to the next conference and you can represent Canada? And me and my oblivious state said, oh, sure, no problem. And so that was in 87. There was a North American conference in 1990 in the States, which I went to. I don't know how I ever thought I could represent Canada, but here I go. And then in 1991, it was actually, they now call it the second Sakyadhita conference, but it was really the first technical Sakyadhita conference in 1991. And that was in Thailand. So off I went, again, representing Canada. And they've now had 17, 18 conferences. I've been to most of them in Asia. And it's just changed my life to have an international conferences where all Buddhist traditions come, and all ages, all nationalities. It just opened up my whole world of what Buddhism is and what Buddhism is about. And so both Ayakema and Anagarika were both following what's known as the Theravadan tradition. And the Theravadins are considered the elders, or the original. They really have taken the Pali Canon, which is where the scriptures are written down, about 300 years after the Buddha died. They don't say he died, he reached parinibbana. Anyway, that's the Theravadan tradition. And it's the tradition that I have studied mostly in. I've done a little bit in other traditions, but I definitely lean very strongly towards the Theravadan tradition. And so my gratitude to both Ayya Khema and Anakarika goes back right from my first introduction to Buddhism. And that's what all of you are hearing from me right now. And I know most of you follow to some degree those teachings from the Theravadan tradition. And in my studies over the years, and again, mostly in the Theravadan tradition and mostly from Anagarika, there were sort of three. I can only tell you this now, 50 years later. I could not have told you so clearly. The older I get and the more I practice, the clearer I become in what the teachings offer. And so part of what we did tonight with the chanting was what I'm going to refer to as the devotional aspect of the tradition. So it would be the chanting, offering of incense, flowers to a shrine. The shrine could be a Buddha statue. It may be a picture. I have a picture of Anagarika on I call it my desk, my altar. And so those would be the devotional aspects. And one of the things I'm hoping some of this passes on to you is just chanting what we chanted tonight. I mean, that's minimal. It's just a small amount, but the homage. So homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. We repeat it 3 times. And just to give yourself some time, I really don't want you just to say the words. I want you to sort of open your heart and say, what does that mean? What does it mean to pay homage, to pay respect, to be grateful for? And so again, that's part of the devotional aspect. Another aspect that was, again, from Anagarika was to study the scriptures. And I'm sure you know this, but I'm going to repeat it again for you. I don't think it ever hurts to hear all this stuff many, many times. But when we study, to remember that the suttas were not written down, so the theory goes, for about 300 years after. So it was, the teachings were handed down by mouth, by contact. Nothing was written down. And then about 300 years is what most of the scholars will agree upon. But even then, right now, if you go to study the suttas, you will find that they call them commentaries. There's footnotes. And those footnotes came 100, 200 years after the originals were written down. So what we're getting is sort of, I'm going to say diluted, maybe, but sort of, we've no way of knowing whether what we're being taught is true, if you can say anything's true. But that's now referred to, and I'm really strongly leaning more and more towards the ancient wisdom traditions. And these really speak to me. I did the same, and I have done the same with yoga. I wanted to know what the original sutras were at that time, and how they were translated and what they meant. And I've done a lot of this in the Buddhist tradition. And again, if you're at all interested, there's two scholars that I follow regularly. One is, his name's Bhikkhu Bodhi. Bhikkhu means monk, and Bodhi. And he's about my age, and he's spent most of his time, he's a Theravadan monk, so most of his time in Sri Lanka. He's now living in the States, and every Saturday morning he does a sutta class. So I join in every Saturday morning. He takes a sutta, he translates it, he knows, he compares the Theravadan translation with the Chinese translation. They're called agamas in the Chinese, and compares them. And he speaks, because he can translate them from Pali into English. When he's doing a sutta, he'll take a word and he'll go, well, that's one way of translating it. Another way, and I'll use something as simple as dukkha. Dukkha. And generally it's translated as suffering. And he'll go, well, it depends who's translating it and in what context are they using it. Because it can, dukkha, and that's one of the Pali words that I know a lot of the teachers I've worked with will not translate, because it can mean everything from just a small irritation to outright pain, whether it be mental, emotional, or physical pain. All of that covers dukkha. So when you read the suttas, you have to have a bit of an idea of what the Buddha was teaching, who he was teaching it to, who he was talking to. All of that's in the suttas. It'll tell you where it took place, so if he was talking to the king, or if he was talking to the rice farmer, or he was talking to a lay person, a lay man or woman, or whether he's talking to a monk or a nun. All of that is in the suttas. And so it's rich. It's rich. And Bhikkhu Bodhi does he's, in my mind, he's probably one of the best. Another one that I like is Analeo. And his work is, I've got all his books, and Bhikkhu Bodhi's too. And Analeo, if you haven't read it and you're at all interested, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And I do think that any of us that are really serious about practicing meditation need to have some idea of those 4 foundations of mindfulness, because it lays the framework for meditation. It talks about meditation and how there's so many different ways we can use meditation, both formally, as we just did, or informally, day to day. How can we be more mindful? And so that's the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The other 2, as I'm go back to or continue with study for just a minute, the other 2 books, and I pulled them out. Oh, they're sitting on the counter right here. One is the 4 Noble Truths. And there's many translations of the 4 Noble Truths, but I think it's really important that we have, that's the framework of all the Buddhist teachings. Everything is within the 4 Noble Truths. And I think we really need to have some idea of what is that all about? What are those truths? Are they conventional truths? Are they ultimate truths? How can we use them in our lives? So the 4 Noble Truths, I think, is another mandatory reading. And the other is the Noble Eightfold Path. And Bhikkhu Bodhi has, again, there's many translations, but he's got one of the ones I like the best. It's called The Noble Eightfold Path by Bhikkhu Bodhi. And they're not big, but they're not the kind of thing you can sit like a novel and just read through. I have a few different study groups. Some meet once every 2 weeks. One group meets twice a week. And we take sometimes one paragraph and sometimes one or two sentences, read it through, and then talk about it. What does this mean? How do you feel about it? What do you pick up that's important to your life? And really make it practical. The teachings are practical. They're very, very practical. So you've got the devotional aspect of the Buddhist teachings, you've got the study aspect of the Buddhist teachings, and the one that I think all of us are drawn to is the meditation, the practice of meditation. And there are many, in the Theravada, there's countless number of ways and paths to meditation, let alone in the Mahayana tradition. That's a lot can be similar, but a lot are quite different. Different approaches, different techniques, different focuses. And I can give you one example that touches my heart a lot is the Dalai Lama from the Tibetan tradition. And his focus almost always, every time I hear him talk, is on compassion. So how, what does compassion mean? What are the different translations of that? How can we incorporate it in our sitting practice? How can we use it in our day-to-day activities, our day-to-day life? In the Theravada, there is definitely, again, it depends on the teacher. Even in the Theravada, there's quite a range differences. And you'll get somebody like Ajahn Chah, and that's a tradition I've really leaned into, is the teachings from Ajahn Chah. And when Westerners go to study with him, he's passed away now, but when he was alive and Westerners would go to study with him, he'd say, put your books away, just practice. And one of his, it's a joke, but it's not a joke, is go sweep leaves. Keep the path clean, sweep leaves, and see what comes up. I mean, can you do it easily? Or are you mad because you got to sweep leaves and you have to do it every day? It's not like you can just do it once a week and they're done. But that was his focus was on practice, on meditation. And then you can go to people that we know, and I know Shirley and Connie know. Ananda Maitreya comes to my mind. And he's deceased now, but Anagarika brought him to Canada to teach us Abhidhamma quite a few times. And we have lots of cassette tapes and lots of transcribed talks that he gave, because he would go into the theory part and the study part for us. So that was his leaning, was towards study. So yeah, I'd like to motivate you, inspire you to touch upon all three of those aspects: the devotional aspect, the study aspect, and the practice aspect. And as much as you can. There's no magic, and it's got to be a third this, a third that, nothing like that. But if you take something, just one little bit, or read some of, I came as lots of books from her retreats. Her retreats were all transcribed. We, mostly the Calgary bunch, would transcribe her talks, and then one of our students took the tapes, and I'm going to use the word, I might not be saying this correctly, but digitalize them, and they're now available mostly through Dhamma Talks. You can look up the website, and it's called Dhamma Talks or Dhamma Seed, one of those, because they've changed their name a few times. And so all of Aya's talks are there now. And that was the work of some of our group here to make those available. Really fortunate for us to have that available to us. So, what else was I going to talk about? Gratitude, 5 precepts. That's something I often do if I'm leading a retreat, an in-person retreat. We'll do the precepts, and the precepts in the Theravada tradition are seen as guidelines. They're seen as a framework, a container for us to live our day-to-day lives. And again, there's something to reflect upon. Their guidelines to undertake the training, not to harm, not to steal, no sexual misconduct, no intoxicants that cloud the mind. And so those are just, like I say, they're guidelines for us. And we do the best we can, day to day, moment to moment, with those precepts, with the understanding of how, if we're generating kindness and goodness from our heart, that's going to have an effect, as is the opposite. So if I'm going to be harming or stealing, that's going to have an effect too. And that all leads to cause and effect. Karma is sometimes put in that understanding. Dependent origination, which is the Buddhist teaching on the coming and going of everything, and how things, emotions, feelings, body sensations come and go, and how that arises and ceases. I do think that the precepts are, again, something worthwhile reflecting upon. So, just because we've got a small group, and I know most of you personally, I thought that maybe we could, if I ask you a question, maybe each of you would take a few minutes and answer it. In that, what in your practice, in the years you've been practicing, if you could name just one thing that's changed for you, your life, can you share that with us, or would you like to share that with us? Let me put it that way. Just one thing. It might mean something like, yeah, I want to sit every day. That's really important to me. Or maybe somebody, as I've shared with you, both Anagarika and Ayakema strongly impacted my life. And I've worked with a lot of good teachers. I've had the good fortune, and I know some of you have as well, is being able to, and in this tradition, it's often called drawn close to people who are committed to the Buddhist teachings. And nuns, monks, lay people, lay men, lay women. I've had just some good fortune, some good karma somewhere along the line, years and years, hundreds of years ago, that have brought me to have that opportunity, and to meet Anagarika when I did, to meet Ayakema when I did. Really important. So somebody can say something, ask something, comment.
I would comment. I guess just everything about the Buddhist path has certainly impacted my life and changed it to a different direction. And the awareness that I can have on a daily basis or in the practice,
Yeah.
I can't imagine living without. And the biggest impact in my studies was when we went to the Abhayagiri Monastery in California. And to just be living with all those monks, I don't know how many there were, maybe 15 or so.
Yeah.
To just be in the room with them was just out of this world to me. And I just felt like I'd come home. Yeah.
I think whenever you're with, and the conferences do that to me as well. I think the first conference in 91, there were about 200 people. This year, there were over 2,000. 2,000, you know, people sort of all with the same mindset of using Dhamma in their lives. It's pretty significant. Yes. Yeah. Thanks, Leslie. Connie.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure always to see you, everybody, and especially I couldn't miss your talk today, Jayanta. So I was a little bit late because I got stuck in traffic and couldn't get home in time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. We're held hostage on the North Shore to the traffic in North Vancouver.
Yes.
But I wanted to speak because about this. I have been contemplating very much on this practice that I have adopted since I first met Anagarika, that Shirley introduced me to, and then where I met Jayanta, you. I was a really angry young woman at I just finished university and I was just so angry. And Anagarika introduced metta and said I should be doing that. That's what I should focus on. And I'm really glad I did, because I just find like now after practicing the softening of the heart and by doing that, the connection with life, with everything about life, good, bad. And even in my later years, I find that it helped to sustain me through a lot of dukkha and a lot of delusions. And in the practice, I was just been fortunate enough to have really good teachers. And I have to congratulate myself because I chose the teachers based on Anagarika's teaching. And that has really had like just, I'm not an angry young person anymore. I don't find myself being angry anymore. And I just realize that I don't want to keep going on and on, but I just realized that I don't need to be anymore. Like there's just no need for anger, and just by just, it's hard to explain, but it's just a way of life. Like, and it just sort of brings so much joy in now in my later years. I just let's put it this way: nothing phases me anymore. Like there's nothing I haven't seen, heard, or experienced that is going to be that bad that would make me angry and want to, beat up the world or change it.
Thank
I
you,
don't
Connie.
know.
That's good. Thank you. That's really nice to share.
I can speak about Anagarika. I can speak about you too, Jayanta. And I apologize for not having introduced you properly, but I didn't quite know what to say because I could have spent the next hour and a half talking about you. But what I did discover, and like Leslie, when I first met Anna Garrica, literally, and when the door was opened and I saw her, the tears started coming down my face. I was 19 years old at the time. And the first thought that arose in my mind was, I've come home. And there was nothing in my background to suggest that I would have, come upon anyone that was Buddhist or knew anything about it. So it was pure karma on my part. Or perhaps Anna Garrica got stuck with me, as she mentioned a number of times. But it has made all the difference in my life. So much so that I would not have literally survived without meditation. And meditation for me is life itself. So life is a meditation. So, I can stand by a bus stop and just observe what's going on and realize that I can be doing standing meditation. Or I can be walking and doing walking meditation. Or I can be sitting or even lying. And even if I fall asleep, that's okay, because she said that as well. She said, well, if you're lying and you're doing lying meditation, you fall asleep, she says, that meditation will carry you through 8 hours of sleep. Yeah. However, what comes to mind now is we did a 72-hour we did meditation throughout a 3-day period. And she said at that time, the meditation would carry us through 2 hours of sleep. And so my task was to wake up 2 hours and ring the bell or something so that other people could sit. And you were one of them.
I was one of them. That's right.
And there was basically 5 people that first studied with Anna Garrica. There was yourself, Jayanta.
Yes.
Then there was Christopher and Diane Robinson. And then there was Gregory Kramer.
Yeah.
And then there was me. And quite extraordinary. She said that you and Christopher and Gregory were teachers. And 50 years later, each one of you in your own way is a world teacher. You've acquired the insight and the patience and the commitment to speak from that same place that she taught us to speak from that place of heart, of courage, and steadfastness. But regardless of whatever happened, there was incredible joy in Anna Garrica's being, and she passed that all on to us. And I know that she didn't really want to meditate. She didn't want to teach. So she spent most of her time looking for a teacher for us. It took her 22 years to find that teacher. And just before that, she passed on. Basically, it was, I found the person, I'm leaving now. Although she would have liked to have stayed. And that person was Bunty
Punaji.
That's
Punaji.
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be more blessed. And before I finish, I talk too much. That is to say, how grateful I am for the Buddha and for yourself and for all of these meditators here who provide a community for me that allows me to practice. And on that basis, I'd like to thank every single one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shirley. Okay. Matthew?
Hi.
Hi, Matthew.
Hopefully you guys can hear me. It looks like my video is a bit choppy, but hopefully the audio is good. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
For me, yeah, okay, good. Probably the biggest change overall, the length that I've been meditating, Again, I met Jayanta when I was young as well at a yoga and meditation day, I believe. And then she came, Barb brought her to Winnipeg for a number of 5-day retreats. And I'm very grateful for Barb to doing that and for you coming to Winnipeg, because otherwise I wouldn't have met you. And I remember the first 5-day retreat we came in, I came from we had that one day, and then we had the 5-day retreat. And then I remember walking into that retreat and you said, "Oh, hi, Matthew." And you remember my name and welcomed me. And I guess I knew at that point, like Shirley said, that I was home. Like, this is what you were the teacher that was going to take me somewhere at that point, and this was the method. So I remember that. And then also, I think probably the biggest change is probably the Sangha that we started here in Winnipeg, I think. Because you came back for a day retreat one day, and we had about 25 people here in Winnipeg take that. And I can't remember if you suggested or if I asked you if we should start, or I can't remember, but we started a monthly sit with a bunch of group of people from that group. And that is I guess a real powerful thing for me, to come back to people like you say that have the same mindset or the same following the teachings, I guess, all following the teachings, and to have that support from those people and to be able to get together with them every month is really special. It's like a recharge every month. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've received since I started, to have that support from people that are like-minded.
Yeah, it is special. The Buddha's teachings is the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the triple gem. And so the Sangha is equally important. Yeah. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. Kai?
Found my button.
Yep.
I couldn't find my mute button.
Oh.
Am I good?
Yeah, you are good. Yes.
I'm not really. But I am grateful. I'm very grateful to have this little opportunity today. Any opportunity to sit with a group. I don't seem to have very many. I've come to the realization that I really am a householder in those terms. My time is I'm booked. I'm just seem to be still, even though I retired, especially now I've retired, I can't get a day off. Right? It's just so full. My life is so full. I have a son who lives with me. I mean, I'm married. I'm looking after my mom still. I have the music thing, which is very demanding on my time. And I have 2 little grandchildren. And it just seems like there's not a whole lot of time left for retreats and practicing and doing what I sometimes wish I could do. But what I have, whatever it is I've done so far, thanks to you, Shirley, and all my teachers, has really helped me out. Like Connie, I really love what you said about the softening of the heart. And this is happening for me too. This is taking me quite a long way. I feel like finally I'm starting to see suffering in the world, and I have a little better understanding of what that is and what's going on. I seem to understand people better in situations, and it does soften the heart, and I am more, if not compassionate, at least something in that direction, right?
Yes.
Where there's just a little more peace in my life. So, with much gratitude to all my teachers and the Buddha and the Sangha as it exists for me, which is kind of strange, but it's there, and certainly the teachings. Love Ajahn Chah, by the way.
Yes. Yes.
I can't get enough. I just keep reading. I just
Yeah.
keep
Yeah.
reading Ajahn Chah. It just works for me so good.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Kai. Ajahn Chah, he was phenomenal. And like his talks, I mean, he just one or two words, one or two sentences. And if you just pick it up and read it throughout the day or days later, his little sayings come back, and they're helpful. They're nice little reminders as we go about our busy days, for sure. And I'll share with all of you a little secret. There's Kai and two other fellows that live here in Calgary. And so he does meet with his Sangha, but we have carrot cake and lattes. So, thanks, Kai. Anne, do you want to say a few words? You have to unmute yourself. There you go.
I was very fortunate to be raised in a loving family, but I found that the Buddhist tradition continues with that and even more so. So one of the things is being kind to others, caring for others. And recently, a friend of mine who's single had a hip surgery. So I took him to the hospital. I brought him back from the hospital. I brought him food. Another friend had gut problems, so I was helping her. It just feels very natural and the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's nice. That's that soft, kind heart,
yes.
for sure.
Yes.
Yes. Thanks,
and
Anne.
I'd just like to interrupt and say that it was because of Anne and her persistence and steadfastness that we have a Zoom process that takes place on a weekly basis. So on that basis, Anne, thank you very much.
Thank you, Anne. Yes. Laura, do you want to
I guess I'm
add something?
last but not least. I relate to a lot of things that other people said. So I'll try to keep it short. But I feel very lucky that I learned quite a bit about Buddhism relatively early on in life. But I was first introduced to it in an academic context. So I had a little bit of a weird introduction where I studied it academically and then just thought, oh, this all makes so much sense, and sort of fell into it that way. But there's just, I think, so many parts of my life and ways, my whole worldview and the way that I see the world, I think, was so heavily influenced by the things that I was lucky enough to learn about, cause and effect and interconnection and, compassion and all these kinds of things. And so, and I think, and having something to sort of come back to, there's been times when I've fallen away from the practice and, haven't kept up my meditation and for whatever reason. And, but, have always sort of found myself, when I, feel a bit like I need something, something's missing. Right. And so I end up kind of coming back to it. And, so I think it's just been really wonderful to have that sort of thing that's there, and was so lucky to find this wonderful community during COVID when I was in sort of one of those places where, I was like, I need something, I haven't been meditating for a while. And so this has been really just such a wonderful, group to really get back into it. But it's hard to even say, how has it affected my life, because I feel like how hasn't Buddhism, have been a huge, wonderful influence in my life. It's I feel so grateful to have learned the teachings and all the amazing people. Like you go to meditation retreats and you just have such a wonderful, loving, like-minded group of people. And it's just so refreshing sometimes in today's world to remember that all those people are out there and being loving to each other. So I know that's a bit of a ramble, but those are sort of the things that come to mind there for sure. So
thank you very much. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for or being our host tonight. That's really nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, my pleasure. I don't know if you wanted to do the loving kindness. I
I
have
do.
a document for that. Hopefully it's the right one.
I want to do Anagaricus, so I'm hoping you have that.
Let's see. I will put it up and you can let me know if it is the right one or not. Where is my...
This loving kindness that Anagarika translated for us in the beginning years was before I had ever seen. Nope, not that one.
No, that's not the
Laura.
right one.
No. I mean, that's a nice, there's so many nice versions now, but when Anagarika gave us this one, there weren't any others. This was all we had. So I'll recite it and you can just listen to me, but just sit and listen to the words. These are the words Anagarika gave us, okay? Let me be free from greed, hatred, and delusion. So those are our three unwholesome roots for all of us. Let me be free from greed, hatred, and delusion. Let me be selflessly giving, understanding, and insightfully clear. Let me be selflessly giving, compassion, understanding. Through understanding, wisdom comes, insightfully clear. The insights come if we can get into a calm state. My heart is filled with loving kindness. Every cell of my being is filled with loving kindness, and I am protected. I am sending out loving kindness in all directions, north, south, and east, west, to all the points in between, above and below. Loving kindness reaching out to the corners of the universe, touching all animate and inanimate things, touching everyone, touching everything. A whole universe filled with loving kindness. And I shall receive loving kindness from all beings without exception. Loving kindness to all. Loving kindness to all. Loving kindness to all. Thank you all. Thank you, Anagarika. Lovely to see you, to share. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jayanta.
Thank you so very much,
Laura,
Jayanta.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank
Very
you.
welcome.
And
With
thank you,
great
Laura, for
gratitude
bailing.
for being here tonight,
Yes.
Jayanta. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
You.
So nice
Thanks.
to see you, Con.
Nice to see everybody. Nice to see you too, Shirley. Leslie, it's great seeing you. It's been a
Yes.
while.
Yeah.
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 See you.
And Matthew, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kai, I think this is the first time I've seen your name so many times, but I think this is the first time I've seen you in
Yes.
person.
Oh, nice. Laura, it's very nice to see you too. That's pretty
Okay.
sweet.
Have a
And
good
Anne
Carrot
is
cake soup.
wonderful.
week, everyone. Have a good week.
Thank you,
Thank
Anne.
you.
Take
You
care
too.
of your
And you
wrist,
take
Anne.
your
Okay.
wrist.
Take care of your wrist.
Rest your
care.
wrist.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Bye bye.
And Laura, thank you
Okay.
for providing
Yeah.
the container of the Zoom
Right.
room.
My pleasure. Thanks everyone for
Yeah.
your patience. My
You
slightly
did-
less than perfect hosting, but
You
we got
did
through
it.
it.
No.
You did
No,
a
it's-
fantastic job, Laura.
You did a good job.
Good job.
Very good.
Yes.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye,
Bye, everyone. Good
Jayanta.
night.
Bye, Kai. Bye, Matthew. Bye, Leslie. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you